Hey everybody, this is Zach with Spooky Tanuki Games. That's right, for the entire month of October, we'll be looking at the scariest in gaming experiences. Today, we're taking a look at the survival horror adventure game Until Dawn. Until Dawn was released in 2015, it was developed by Supermassive Games, and it was exclusively released on the PlayStation 4. My interest in the game was initially piqued when I saw the graphics. The photorealistic style seemed to be a perfect fit for the horror genre. For the past few years, Until Dawn has garnered a bit of a following, and I wanted to check it out. This review is as spoiler-free as possible. Let's see how Until Dawn turned out, shall we? The story of Until Dawn opens on top of an isolated mountain in Alberta, Canada. A group of kids decide to play a cruel joke at the expense of two of their friends. Traumatized, the two run off from the group and go missing, never to be seen again. Fast forward 1 year, and the 8 remaining kids reunite to relive the bad old times back on the peak. The story takes place over one night, and each chapter is basically 1 hour in the teens' lives, as they try to stay alive. The first few episodes are a slow burn, where the teenagers are walking around and talking to each other. By the mid-game, Until Dawn turns into a full slasher gore fest. Until Dawn is an amalgamation of horror tropes such as shrieking into the abyss, daring the killer to come and get them, all a scream.
You wanna ruin our fun that bad? Well, guess what? You can't ruin our good time, because Michael and I are gonna fuck.
Elaborate torture scenarios as seen in films like Saw, and of course obligatory bath scenes as seen in pretty much every slasher flick since Psycho. The latter half of the game turns the story on its head and supernatural elements are introduced. This part of the story would be much closer to Japanese-style horror movies or creature features. Some people weren't terribly happy with the direction of the falling action of the game, but I quite liked it. Admittedly, the falling action feels tonally different from the first part of the game and a bit disconnected from what got you invested in the story in the first place. The major reveal midway through the game is a bit of an unsatisfying one. It feels more Scooby-Doo than a traditional horror story. Until Dawn's tale is at its best when you spend time with the characters. The dialogue is interesting, and the writers capture the unique way that children are shitty towards each other.
On your territory, honey.
Excuse me? Did you say something?
Oh, did you not hear me? Was your sluttiness too loud?
Sounds like someone's bitter she didn't make the cut.
Yeah, it's all a big cattle call with that dreamboat. Congrats, you're top cow.
There are a few moments during the tale that don't quite make sense. The logical jumps characters make feel half-baked. I'm not sure if this was due to my choices or the writing. Love it or hate it, Until Dawn's characters are likable, and the story is scary as all get out. At first glance, Until Dawn looks like an adventure game clone, like any Telltale game we've grown to get used to. However, Until Dawn shares its gameplay DNA with two other more unlikely games, LA Noire and Silent Hill Shattered Memories. As you play Until Dawn, exploration is one of your biggest assets. When you look around the environments, you'll find objects to inspect. These animations are similar to the animations while inspecting in LA Noire. This investigation of the environments doesn't only serve as a collectathon, but it enriches the story.
Chris, let's go find it. It'll be like a scavenger hunt.
Okay. Guess so. Rad.
You'll want to thoroughly comb through the environments to learn more about all the crazy stuff that's happened on top of this mountain over the years. These are optional, but you won't get nearly as much out of the story if you don't look around. There are gameplay innovations that feel like gimmicks at first, but they're used very effectively later in the game. For example, there are moments where you have to stay still, and you do this by not moving the PS4 controller. I thought this was pretty lame, but there are a few moments where I really was surprised at how well this mechanic worked. There are QuickTime events during the game that aren't bad, but aren't great either. The story unfolds through varying choices that will affect whether people live or die. There's a very effective interplay between the narrative and the gameplay. It's been done before, but Until Dawn's execution is very good.
Boom. Butterfly effect.
The other gameplay similarity of Until Dawn is with Silent Hill Shattered Memories. In both games, there's a psychological profile of you created during scenes with a therapist. In these scenes, the shrink will ask you questions, and depending on how you answer will depend on how the story plays out. Every decision matters in Until Dawn, but you're never quite sure how it will affect the outcome. You might be trying to help someone, and it ultimately leads to that character's death. Until Dawn has many scenarios that can play out with each scene, and it makes me want to play the game again. Until Dawn is a visually arresting game. As I played in my office, which is what I call my game room, people walking by would just sit down and start watching the game. I can assume this was due to the motion capture characters that makes them feel more lifelike. Again, LA Noire was the first major game to employ this technique, but Until Dawn looks much better due to its limited scope. Further limiting your view is the fixed camera. This harkens back to older survival horror games on the 5th and 6th generation of consoles. Luckily, it doesn't suffer from the control issues of its forefathers. The camera work does a good job of keeping you from getting a peek of what's around the next corner. It also makes Until Dawn seem like a much more cinematic package. The blocking and set pieces are all very well executed, with some exceptions towards the final act. The house that the kids are in is a character in and of itself. It's big and desolate, yet you can tell it wasn't always that way. Each of the locations you'll go through have a very similar feel. The storytelling the environments convey is a testament to how much thought went into the design of each set. As the night progresses, the light cast from the moon changes, making the shadows in the trees seem to twist, making the outdoor segments feel much more ill-omened. The shadow play is very important for any horror game, and the dynamic umbra as you use your flashlight is excellent. All horror games have a dark palette, but Until Dawn does a good job of using bright highlights to contrast with the gloomy atmosphere. There are some technical issues with Until Dawn as far as pop-in and stilted body animations. Some of the shadow work on the faces looks artificial, and every now and then the faces seem to lose focus, making everything look kind of janky. These minor issues aside, Until Dawn is a great looking game. Visually, the most impressive aspect of the game comes towards the end. There's a truly trippy moment that is both surreal and horrifying. I wish there were more moments in Until Dawn that tapped into this bizarre, distressing energy. For any horror game, the sound must be on point to keep the player on edge, and Until Dawn is impressive on all fronts. It effectively manipulates your emotions, and you'll stay tense for almost the entire game. The sound design in Until Dawn is excellent. From the sampling of wild animals, to the crunch of snow, to the creaks and cracks of the old home, Until Dawn does a wonderful job immersing you in its spine-chilling world. The sound is well mixed, and it does feel three-dimensional. The sound design is intentionally crafted, and it emphasizes the setting perfectly. The music helps accentuate all this ambient sound. It impeccably fits both the jump scares, which there are plenty, and the more suspenseful moments that make you swirl in a torrent of sinister sounds. This isn't a soundtrack I would listen to independent of the game, but it is effective at giving you the willies. The acting is for the most part strong in Until Dawn, with one minor exception. The actors are effective at conveying the story, but there are moments where the performances feel awkward. This may be due to the writing more than the acting. There is a lot of screaming and crying in the game, which can feel tiresome after a while. The only character that is a sore thumb is the therapist. He has some kind of strange accent or lisp, I can't tell which. There isn't a difficulty per se in Until Dawn. When you make a bad decision, that person is dead and their storyline stops. I wasn't very good at keeping my group alive, and I was only able to save 2 of the 8 kids. Until Dawn will take you about 8 hours to complete, and you can pick up a copy for about $15. Until Dawn has a lot of replayability, and the price seems like a good value. I want to replay the game and see if I can keep the whole group alive next time. You'll definitely want to go in blind to get the most out of this game. There are a lot of genuine surprises in the story, so try not to let guides or walkthroughs spoil it for you. Until Dawn is a great example of how to turn the adventure game genre on its head, while still knowing its roots. It executes a terrifying tale that is genuinely both creepy and intriguing. The mystery of what happened to the missing girls, what's going on top of this isolated mountain, and who will survive will keep you engaged. Until Dawn. This is Zach with Spooky Tanuki Games. Please remember that a like, a comment, or subscribe means a lot to me and of course the channel. Enjoy.
Little gap down there? Between the cart and the wall?
The tiny little gap?
Yeah, maybe you can just, like shimmy through it or something.
I appreciate your confidence in my physique, but I don't think the ladies are gonna fit.
Oh, right. Okay.